talk about in a little while. Right now I'm selected to all segments off. If I go to all segments on, you'll notice on the right side of the screen here that all 52 segments of the LEDs are turned on. Again, if I go back and select them all off and set that mode in here, they are all off. The next one I'm going to show you is the temperatures, all 52 segments. In other words, right now we're running all 52 segments. And it is showing a temperature. If you want to know what the actual temperature is on the board, you can click this button down here, and it says that in the room right now I'm at 75.2. The next one I'm going to show you here is the scroll on the top and bottom 4 segments. Basically what happens here is that the top and bottom segments count up. Each segment is individually turned on. The segments are turned on at what I call the scroll rate. The scroll rate can be set in this little box down here. In other words, if I want them to run faster at say 0.1 seconds in between each one, and I click the button in here, you can see that they speed up in the top. The scroll rate that they change at changes at the top and the bottom. The next mode I'm going to show you is what I call a binary scroll. Basically what that does is that it counts the top and bottom segments up from 0 to 15 in binary and turns on the appropriate segments to demonstrate that. If you want to change again the scroll rate on here, if I go to 0.5, it slows the rate that they count at down. The fastest you can go is about 0.01 seconds, and the fastest I've got in here is about 10 seconds. The next one I show you is a scroll all the way from the bottom to the top. In other words, all 52 segments will scroll from the bottom to the top. You can see that they count up at 0.5 seconds in between each segment being turned on. Again, if you want to change that, say I wanted to go at 0.1 seconds and send that out to the thermometer, it will begin counting at that rate. Or even the fastest you can go at is 0.01 seconds. If I send that out to the thermometer, this is that rate there. Again, this is scrolling all the way from the bottom to the top, all 52 segments. There's another mode which scrolls it from the top to the bottom at the same rate that I just typed in. Again, this one can change. If you simply change the scroll rate to, say, 0.05 seconds, you can see that that counts at a slower rate up and top to bottom. The next thing I'm going to talk about is something called sequencing. That comes out, and you can set that up out here on the page that's called sequencing. Again, there's messages here in the top and the bottom which tells you you're communicating with it. What there are 10 steps in a sequence. You can set each what it's going to do, what mode it's going to display in each one of these sequences. In other words, there's a drop down box in here. You can select all off, all on, temperature on 52. You can use that regular scroll in the top and bottom 4 segments with temperature being displayed on the rest of the display. And also the binary scroll. You can also program in the scroll top to bottom or bottom to top. In each one of these steps, there is a sequence on time. In other words, whatever you type into this box over here on the side will determine the amount of time it will function in the particular mode that you just selected. There's also a scroll rate over here on the side, which is identical to the scroll rate you see in the front. In other words, that's the rate at which the segments themselves change. Again, the time, the sequence time is the amount of time it displays that particular one. The scroll rate is the segment rate change. There are 10 of these in here. You can set every one of them in here. If you set the scroll rate over here to 0, rather, if you set the sequence over here to 0, it will skip that sequence. What I've currently got programmed in here is I start out with all segments on, then I go to a scroll on the top, I go to all off, I go back to temperature on all 52 segments, and I turn it off for just 1 second in between. Over here I've got a binary scroll off, and then I do a regular scroll off, and then I do 52 segments top to bottom and bottom to top. If you send the sequence button up here, it will send out to the control what you've just programmed in. It remembers that information in the control itself, so that if you lose power, it doesn't lose what you've entered in. I'm going to, now that we have a sequence entered into the little computer over here, I am going to select sequence out of the drop down box here, and if I send that to there, then it will begin running the sequence steps that you put in there. Currently it's running all 10 segments. Right now it's just counting the top and bottom segments up in a regular scroll on the top and bottom 4 segments with temperature on the rest of it. This particular display is temperature only. I programmed each one of these in so it runs for approximately 10 seconds and puts a blank in between here. Right after this one you'll see it go blank for a short period of time. Now it's running on what I call this binary scroll. So the top and bottom 4 segments are simply counting from 0 to 15 in binary, back to 0, and repeats for however long you have the sequence in. Now we're going to scroll bottom to top. This is about a 0.01 second segment rate. Now it's going top to bottom at that rate, the scroll rate I put in there. All these are programmed to go about 10 seconds. If you noticed in there, it went back to all on and back to the beginning of the steps in the sequence. It'll repeat the sequence forever. Next thing I'm going to talk about is you can set the time on the thermometer. If you want to know what the current time on the thermometer is, you can click this button down here in the bottom. It will tell you what the current time is running on the particular board. If you go set time, it will take the time on the computer, send it to the computer on the thermometer, and it will remain set. There's also a battery backup feature, wherein if you lose power to the control, it will retain the time on board. If you do not wish to use the clock on board, you do not have to put the battery in. All other functions will be maintained within non-volatile memory. You can also set the start and stop times on the thermometer out here. Basically, this is in 24-hour format. In other words, out here, if I go out here and I read it, currently I've got it set at 5 o'clock in the morning as when the thermometer will begin functioning. It'll start either performing the sequences or whatever mode you had it programmed in. There's also a stop time in here. I've currently got it set at 11 o'clock at night. If you want to change those times, you can select these and type in whatever you want in here. Remember, it's a 24-hour format. You can run the scroll buttons up and down. You can select the minutes also. And once you send that in to the control, let me just change this. I know it's at 5 o'clock. Say I wanted it at 4, and I wanted it at 11. If I send these out to the control, it stays there. Let me just change these to verify that you can see it come back from. In other words, it retained the 4 and 5 o'clock. If I want to change that back to where it was, you can change this back to 23, send it out there, verify that it's still at the same time. Again, the battery backup holds this on here. Down here in the get current temperature, it will also come back and read that anytime you click on here. If you have this little seconds button down here in the bottom set to something other than 0, it will come back and read the current temperature at intervals of however many seconds that is. I'm going to let you sit here and watch this in sequence mode for just a little bit longer. Thank you for watching the video.